who's joined us. Welcome to our special meeting with the auditor. It is February 23rd, 2023. The time is 1:30 p.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. In attendance are Commissioners Matari and Duncan. I do not believe Commissioner Brooks will be joining us. And our one action item is BOCC direction on FY24 budget. So Clerk Locke, or is it
We're going to let Brandy open.
going to let Ms. Falcon lead us?
Brandy Falcon for the record. Good afternoon, Commissioners. We'll try to keep this short and sweet today, but I just want your direction on a couple of important key items as we're getting ready to prepare for the next budget cycle. I've trying to coordinate with IT that we'll have the test environment open in New World by March 1st, and then March 15th is when I'm hoping the budget will go live for departments to start entering their budgets. So we're about 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks away. First, we're going to dive into a budget, and I just want to touch on our matrix very quickly. Our matrix is entering its third year, I believe, still relatively new for the county. It is a tremendous accomplishment, something the board should be very proud of. The matrix provides a level of transparency, equity, and alignment countywide for employee wages. Elected officials come and go throughout the county, but employees can tend to stay more long-term. So a matrix provides a clear path and direction for employee careers and helps maintain a standard compensation plan despite the ebb and flow of different elected officials. With having a matrix, each year the board will need to decide if they want to fund a step for each employee as career progression, and if they want to fund a COLA, which is a cost of living adjustment, or if they want to fund both. Steps are important in maintaining the matrix as it keeps people on a career path and ensures career progression for employees. A COLA is kind of discretionary, up to commissioners if they wanted to add that on. So with that, I'm going to jump into a budget. First, I'll give a couple of my recommendations, and then I'll ask for your direction on specific items. First of all, I would recommend, and I've discussed this with Sylvia, HR Director as well, I would recommend that the board not allow departments to submit step requests. And the logic behind that would be the board either decides that every employee in the county gets a step on their anniversary date as career progression, or nobody does. If you allow step requests and you're approving them, it's kind of this arbitrary process that whoever's department head decides to come forward, those people get steps and other people may not. And then you deal with creating internal alignment problems through the rest of the year in HR meetings. So it creates some issues within the county if we just allow arbitrary steps. And I did review how Ada County's budget process works, and they have their HR department review all requests before being submitted in the budget. So I would recommend no step requests. Either everybody gets one or nobody does. Next, I would say, again, all personnel requests must be reviewed by HR before being added to the budget. This past budget cycle, the board had HR review all the personnel requests, which was a great idea, and it did work well for us, but that was kind of in the 11th hour. And I would prefer that be done at the beginning of the budget cycle because it kind of caused a lot of stress for HR and myself that late in the summertime. So I'd recommend we do that at the front end. That way we know whatever requests are being added to the budget are a legitimate compression or whatever the department is asking for, and then it's up to the board to approve it or not. Next, I would recommend, and this is just kind of an issue with our accounting system, our system automatically calculates any open positions in the budget at a step 6. I would recommend that we do that at a step 5. We can go into the system and change that. And that would be because departments aren't even allowed to hire a new employee above a step 5 without board approval. So it seems really aggressive to me that we would automatically budget open positions at a step 6, knowing that it's pretty rare for a department to go that high when hiring someone. So I think that you will get some automatic budget savings by doing that. And then lastly, there's been some discussion from some commissioners, department heads around doing a countywide step analysis based on employees' time in position. And this is referring to when we first implemented the matrix. I'm told we couldn't afford to put everybody, speaking mostly of like long-term employees, at as high of a step as maybe they should have been. So some people were held back. I've had some requests if we could possibly do an analysis countywide to see if there are those long-term employees that should be at a higher step and what the funding for that would look like. So those are my recommendations. Do you have any questions, comments?
Bruce?
Well, I do know that there are some issues with how things have been done in the past, and I think what's real important is that we try to achieve equitable outcomes. I do understand the issue with respect to if you have, and I'll just use the term aggressive manager, who's fighting for their employees to get more step increases versus those that don't. It ends up becoming it becomes out of whack, out of balance for other folks. So I guess one thing, and just because I'm new to this process, is how much allowance is there in your systems for like sensitivity analysis to try different, programs and see how that affects the budget?
Anything like that is usually done manually outside of New World. New World gives me the baseline of payroll, and then from there I will calculate if you want to do any percentage increases or if there are specific classes or sets of employees. Any of that type of stuff is usually done outside of New World, and some of that I do work in conjunction with HR, like any type of step analysis. I get data from HR, and then I kind of go provide the financial piece.
And there was another thing that was kind of discussed a little bit too, because you have these steps increases, and then you have a COLA, right? And so the step in my mind is kind of like a time and grade or time and position a little bit if everyone were to get it at some anniversary. And sometimes that seems like it can make it a little more confusing because you have all these different moving pieces in essence, and you decide what you're going to do each year. Conversely, I guess you could argue, depending upon the COLA, that can drive things too. It just depends on the situation. Is there any thought process on like a preference among the employees or anything like that, or is that just
As far as if employees prefer a COLA versus a step, or well, I think employee preference is any type of pay increase. Obviously, people like to see that one versus the other. I would say from an administrative standpoint, between the two, steps are important because you are continuing people's career progression and you're protecting yourself against potential alignment issues where if you have someone hired at like a step 1 or 2 and you're not funding steps for several years, then you're hiring new people at those lower 1 and 2 steps. Then you have employees who have been here for multiple years that are still at that low step, and then that causes some like emotion there for them. So steps do help keeping people advancing to protect against kind of that compression or alignment on the front end.
I guess my only concern is just that, depending upon what the situation is, people will find an argument to say, well, that's not enough or that's not fair and those kinds of things.
Welcome to government.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that before just from my own personal experiences, and that's why usually when it's one number, it's the easiest.
And I'm happy to do analysis on whatever you want to see.
And I take it, that there's a possibility that if we wanted to do just one type of an anniversary step program where the COLA could kind of be built into there in some way, because in the end what it comes out to is what the final dollar amount is, right?
Correct.
That then we could have periodic reviews of the positions, like salary analysis, and then take that too.
So we call them wage studies, and we do them every 3 years, 2 to 3 years. And so that's a holistic look at the county, and Sylvia can add into that too. So I probably, we have not funded steps yet since I've been here. So I I would probably put my priority in funding steps countywide. And then if we can do a COLA, then we'll do that analysis as well. But I really want to focus on steps, and it's been too expensive in the past. So I'm hoping that if we can curtail spending in other areas and make that our focus, that we would be able to offer countywide steps.
And that would be putting people on a career path, in essence, these anniversary things,
Yeah.
and, okay, yeah, all right, well, that makes sense to me.
And HR can look at it and do the analysis of the steps and even come up with a game plan in terms of trying to shift more staff that have been here more years further into the pay scale. We may not be able to take a 14-year employee from step 6 to a 14, but is there something in between? We can get there. And we do that consistently countywide with our pay plan and do that analysis. The one thing about the COLA, what that is helpful for is shifting the whole scale if we need to. And we'll be able to look at some market data, and we'll get some information from other counties through our HR network of what everybody's looking at for increases, so we kind of stay on top of it. Because right now we're competitive in our wages compared to our other counterparts that we're looking at. And so we want to maintain that. So we can give you both. Here's what a COLA would cost. Here's what the steps with some sort of integration of recognizing some seniority. And then, or just 1 step, 2 steps, whatever that may look like. We can give you the various scenarios.
Yeah,
And I do want to point out that the steps do not equate years. So it's not a 1-for-1,
yeah.
So I want to keep that in mind.
Yeah, some steps could be after 2 years, for example.
Sure.
So, and I take it that this would help more for projecting budgets into the future if we had something that was a little more set that way?
Yes, with the steps, and it is always based on budget appropriations, with the steps, it gives individuals a feeling of a career path, like, okay, I'm going to, assuming you've budgeted every year for those steps, you would assume that someone who's been here 14 years has progressed step by step. But our steps are new, so it wasn't even practical for us to bring somebody in at the max of their pay plan with the new step plan system.
Yeah.
They
But
they
it
got
does
on the
help
nearest
them.
step. Yeah, they got on the nearest step to what they were actually making.
Yeah, and the other thing we had done along with that was that if anybody had been with the county 6 or more years in their position, they should have been at least at the market, which is step 6, and we made sure those people got to that step 6.
Yep. So I would like the analysis too to see if we have any outliers. For me, my focus has been fix one thing a year. So, get the steps funded, get COLAs funded, get on the matrix, whatever it is, countywide, but then to pick a problem. Like one of our fixes we did was compression with supervisors. So we fixed that 1 year. So I would like to continue, I want an overall picture, but then I want a fix too. We can identify the most prioritized fix at this point.
Okay. So just so I can
Circle?
guess a yes or no on some specific ones.
Yes.
So the COLA, it sounds like both of you kind of prioritize steps over a COLA. Do you want me to even do the calculation for the COLA, or should I not bother?
I'm not a fan of the COLA if we're going to do some sort of periodic steps. But with the periodic salary review analysis,
Right.
that would be where I think the COLA would kind of be built in.
Yeah, so I'm fine to do that now because I don't know when we're actually going to get the amount of budget we're going to be able
So you're
to
fine to
do
or-
not do the COLA.
Okay, so at this point,
analysis.
I'm not even going to provide analysis for a COLA.
Right.
Okay.
No.
Because we want to try to get everybody a step and then fix the
Okay.
people who.
So then I will provide the calculation for giving everyone a step on their anniversary.
Yes, please.
Yes.
And then this analysis of, like you put at the outliers. Both of you are a yes on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what we discussed about budgeting open positions, are you okay if we switch the system to do step 5 instead of step 6?
I think that's more reasonable because we still have people who hire at 1, 2, 3, and 4. So to budget all the way to step 6 is probably taking some of those funds, and that's actually over taxation at this point. So
Okay.
For the sheriff's matrix, because they have a different matrix,
thank
we
you.
work with the sheriff's office staff, and they have a predetermined step, because theirs doesn't go as high as a step 6 unless you're like a lateral. So
Right.
So then,
we'll work that
instead of
out.
step 5, it would be 97% of market, because that 97% can be a different step if it's on a sheriff's matrix, right?
Yeah.
So it would be budgeting at 97%.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so that's A budget. I'm gonna move on to B budget. My recommendations, is that you tell departments just to submit their budgets flat, no abnormal increases. If there are any large increases, to provide explanation for that. I would say that it's still important for departments to be reviewing 3-year trend of expenses, because it's very possible they could need to decrease a certain line item based on 3-year trend. Next, no new programs unless it directly saves in personnel expenses. Next, any contract or MOU or new program over 50,000 must be competitively bid. And I think that we don't have a choice on this, it's required. We ran into this last budget cycle. The sheriff got a contract approved for some janitorial services, but it was over 50,000 and nobody thought to mention, oh, that should be competitively bid, so they couldn't move forward with that. So I'd like to just from the outset make that a requirement so we don't run into that again. Next, just as a overall best practice for you all is it's easiest to make cuts to departments' B budgets when you are having individual department budget meetings instead of the large county-wide meeting. Because when you're looking at B budget for the entire county at one time, it's very overwhelming and it's very detailed. So if you're wanting to make budget cuts, I would recommend that you be prepared to do that ahead of the department's individual meetings. And just to provide some context for Commissioner Matari, over the summer, I will hold a couple large countywide budget meetings before you all, but then each department will also schedule a meeting with you. It's a public meeting still, but that meeting will focus on just them. So it's more detailed, and usually only them and myself will show up. So it's easier for you to dive into details in those department meetings for cuts to the B budget rather than the large countywide meeting.
But if they follow direction, we may not need to cut anything.
That's true. Okay, so any questions, concerns, discussion on B budget?
I'm fine with submitting flat. My only concern is just things keep escalating. I mean, just they do, and we have a lot of contracts that have escalation clauses in them. So
Okay.
I don't know that flat is super reasonable, but I would say outside of actual contracts that we are engaging in, they should be as flat as possible.
Yeah, if you don't do flat, I guess I could say, is there a certain percentage you'd be comfortable with saying, everyone can increase your line items by this percentage? I mean, then we would want to go based off some sort of CPI index or something. So,
But I don't know, I didn't necessarily like when we said you could increase your budget by 3%, because then they found ways to increase it by 3%. But the moral or the, spirit of the law is if you have contracts, a 5-year contract, and now you're in year 2 and you have a 3% escalation, that's going to move your B budget. I'm okay with that because we've agreed to that. But I don't want to go find, oh, well, we, bought 10 pairs of tennis shoes. We can increase our thing by 3%, so we're going to go buy shoelaces or something. So I rather just kind of say flat except for escalating contracts or 3-year trend in gasoline. I mean, that's
Right.
outrageous. Nancy, did you want to add?
Yes, I have a question, sorry. What about non-capital equipment? That's usually one-time purchases. Do you want that to remain flat, or do you want that to be more of a zero-based type thing?
I would prefer it zero-based. I mean, tell me why you need this.
right, so those roll forward as 0.
Okay.
And yeah, they will have to justify that to you.
Okay?
All right, so yes, on telling departments to submit flat, other than, these required increases.
Right.
What new programs? What do you want to see in regards to new programs? I suggested that, only new programs get submitted if they directly save on personnel expenses. Thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do know that I believe the coroner has something, but the savings won't be realized for 5 years. So I think we still need to look at that.
Right.
So there may be some things that are brought forward, but I think we can handle that in the department meetings
Yeah,
and stuff. But in general, yeah, I don't want new programs unless they're going to save on personnel or even operational expenses. So I know that there's also, I think, one under the sheriff that they won't have to use outside agencies anymore, that they'll handle something in-house. So,
Okay.
you know, those are just two that I know of right now. But in general, yeah, you've got to have a very good reason to bring a new program forward.
Okay. And then I'm gonna say an automatic yes on anything over 50,000. They have to have it competitively bid.
So help me understand that if we are in year 2 of a 5-year contract, they have to go rebid that?
Well, then I would add, so what happened with Tom at the sheriff's office, he got this contract approved and he went to pay for it and the board said, no, you didn't bid this out. So
Okay.
I guess that's my question to you is how you handle that stuff throughout the year. Do departments need to be getting a bid before it even gets added to their budget? Or can they just get a general dollar amount and then they go bid it out during the year? I don't know.
So, yeah, I mean, we have to follow state law. And if
'Cause
state law is 50,000 cutoff, then we have to get those bids.
So I would say it should be relatively easy to get 3 bids.
Yes.
On something when you submit it for a
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
And they just put forth a number that they think is reasonable for that bid to be in their budget. And then when it comes time to solicit the bids.
They have to go out for 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, or it's a state. If they have a state piggyback contract, then they can do that too.
But you're referring to how much should they budget? Like that they know that they have to bid for it. So let's say it's $150,000 that they expect it to come in at.
Right.
They put that in their budget, but then they have to bid for it when the day comes.
Yes.
Well, I guess you could do that. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
put it out for,
They should be able to get a quote.
or
Yeah.
do you want them to get a bid before they add it to the budget?
Yeah, I think they need to get a bid before they add it to the budget. I don't necessarily know that they need
Okay.
3 bids. So it's a 3-tier system. So if it's 50,000 or if it's 49,000 and below, they don't need to get 3 bids. 50,000 to 100,000, they have to get 3 bids. 100,000, they have to open it up to RFP. So
Okay.
request for proposal. Then 200,000 for construction. So construction's the only one that they can just, they have a little bit more leeway until 200,000, then they have to have it open for bid on that. But yeah, I mean, we have to follow procurement law, so that's kind of important.
So you would want to see the bids when it's added to their budget requests?
Well, I think they have to have some reasonable
Justification for the
justification.
dollar amount?
Exactly. Yeah. I can't have, okay, I'm just going to pick a number out of the air and then hope that we can get it for that.
Okay, so they have to get at least one bid to put it in their budget.
Yeah.
But in order to procure it, they need 3.
Bids.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes
If it's
perfect
50
sense.
to 100,000, yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, moving on to C budget. Recommendations would be departments must provide the anticipated useful life of the asset, so how long they are thinking this asset is gonna last them. They must provide a quote for the requested asset. Departments must provide the funding source. No grant-funded requests, that's an automatic requirement, and I'll explain that a little bit. We don't budget grant-funded purchases, and we don't budget anything grant-funded other than personnel, because it is an administrative nightmare to do, and it can inflate your property tax levy. So all grants are done as budget amendments throughout the year. So our budget is compliant and balanced, and there's nothing wrong with it. And then throughout the year, we will amend and add to it grant funding and the offsetting expenses. Does that make sense? So if someone wants to buy a boat with a grant, we don't add that to the budget. Rather, we say, you apply for the grant mid-year, and if you get the grant, now the board approves it, now you have a budget amendment. You have added money and added expenses.
Right. I kind of like to know that they're considering doing that, because if grant match is going to be an issue, we need to know that. So I'm not sure if they.
So you'd
it
like
wouldn't
to
be
know if they're planning on purchasing equipment or planning on applying for grants?
equipment mostly. Yeah, I mean, if you use the boat example, it's like, yeah, we fully intend to get this boat. We need so much grant match, just so we're aware of that coming forward. We will have opportunities to look at the application because they have to get board approval for applications, so.
Yeah, my office looks at all grant applications when they come before you to make sure that there's match available.
Right.
And if there isn't, we would let you know. We would let the department know. And
Sure.
they would pull it off the agenda.
Right. But if somebody's planning, like I know I'd like to apply for this grant, I need 40,000 in grant match. I mean, don't you think we should budget for that?
No, we don't budget grant
Okay.
match. There's an amount of assigned fund balance in general fund, but the board has not written a policy around it, so
Right.
far it has been unused.
Okay.
Other than that, grant match comes from restricted funds,
Yeah,
which is fine.
90% of the
Departments
time.
track their own fund balance,
Yeah.
with our help, track their fund balances. Your concern would be anybody using general fund grant match,
right. Yeah. All
which
right,
is a lot more rare.
right.
Most people are using restricted funds, and we look at that in their budgets. If they're requesting to use fund balance for a purchase, we make sure they have the fund balance. So,
Okay,
and then, again, if there's like an ongoing construction project, I'd recommend we would need quotes for that type of stuff. One thing, KC North, I don't know if you're going to want to be budgeting anything for that. I think that probably having quotes for big projects like that would be helpful, requiring quotes for that type of stuff. And then I did kind of recommendation or up for discussion, including fleet management in capital requests for vehicles. So I'm open to thoughts, recommendations.
I mean, it was
on those
my
items.
understanding that all vehicle requests go through go through fleet management, and then both KCSO and fleet management are working kind of side by side. And yeah, so I think that that's very important because it was very helpful to me to have fleet management say, here's our priorities, okay? These people have to have one this year. These people can wait till next year. So it was really easier to make those decisions with fleet management involved.
Okay. So, yes or no, requiring departments to provide a estimated useful life for the requested asset?
Yes.
Yes.
Quotes for requested assets or projects? And they had to provide quotes
Yes.
last year,
Yeah.
so this won't be anything new.
Yep.
And then specifying a funding source. I
Yeah.
would say that comes into play mostly with people who are in restricted funds like vessel or snowmobile, but people knowing where their money is coming from.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then no grant funded requests, we discussed that, that's a yes.
Right.
And then you said yes to including fleet management in vehicle requests.
Yes. Yep. And so I think that whatever communication we do to the countywide management team, I think that needs to be stressed because we did have requests outside fleet management last year. And it was
Okay.
kind of a last minute, thing. So I just want to remind everybody this year that yes, all vehicle requests go through, whether they're restricted or not, because it's still taxpayer dollars.
Okay,
So-
and Keith, I don't know, is there like a form that you want them to fill
Yeah.
out, or do you just want them to mark that they've discussed it with
No,
fleet
we
management?
actually provided a form with the new approval of the fleet management policy.
So you want that form filled out?
Yes, I'd like that form because that form is going to go to fleet management, and then I don't know what you're going to provide to us.
Oh, we would have it in a period of time. We haven't set the time yet. And then it is in the policy, attached to the policy that you guys approved like 2 weeks ago for the request for the vehicle. And also it's what they're going to do with their current vehicle that they're replacing. So it should be almost like two forms coming in with it
Sure.
to submit that. And then I was just waiting for dates to kind of sit and see when they got to have it into Yavai and stuff like that, because I was going to form the request off the same,
Okay.
what your dates were.
I'll send you, yeah, budgets are due by statute beginning of May, so I will put those dates together for you. So,
Just if you could tell me when you want to know it by.
Oh, when I want to
Yeah,
have a
you want the
request?
information so you can
As
provide.
long, it just has to be in their budget by the statutory deadline. And to
Okay.
get in their budget, it has to go through you. So if
Okay.
they have me add it to their budget, I'm gonna make sure they have the
Okay.
fleet management form.
Okay.
And that's all I care about,
Sounds good.
so. Okay,
Okay.
anything else that you wanted to discuss about the upcoming budget cycle?
Mostly for me, I really want to get these steps funded. They have not really been in our grasp before, so I would ask that if departments can maintain flat or even cut some places, don't cut deep enough where you got to come back and say, I'm sorry, I'm bleeding now and I need more, but, make sure that they're paying attention to exactly what they need to get their job done, and I'll support that. But I'd like to really not spend it on a bunch of nacho machines and stuff and, try to get us, get our employees moving down the matrix.
Okay. So I think that we had discussed, you said you want to do an actual motion.
Oh, I didn't know if we needed one.
Can I
wanted
add something too?
Yeah.
Discussing revenues and fees, I think everyone needs to
Yes.
really take a look, each department, what's laid out in statute of what they can or cannot adjust regarding fees. And then if they can increase it, obviously research that too, revenue to expenses and the cost of doing business. Because at most times when we don't look at that, we're offsetting that by property tax. So we know there's some bills coming about with the assessor, I think, title fee.
Yes.
But just have, I would say, community development also look at that and see how maybe we can look at the fees versus it being offset by property tax.
Yep. That would be very important. So
Do they need to make a motion?
I don't think so. It's mostly direction to our departments, to
Okay.
countywide people. So I just wanted to see, I wasn't sure
Well,
how.
it's pretty
we're
clear
gonna-
the yeses and nos that we went through, and then I'll communicate this to people,
Yeah.
so,
Okay.
okay, thank you,
Right.
that's all I have.
Sylvia, did you have anything else to add? Okay, great. Bruce?
No, just thank you for being very organized. I think that will really help. And you obviously know where I stand with, the steps and the matrix and all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad to see that we all want to kind of work towards really helping the folks out in the county to have career paths a little bit more. So,
Absolutely. And then when we get into it a little bit more, we'll have to have parameters, because people on performance improvement plans, there's
Yes.
going to be issues that we have to address. So it's not just like you are alive, you get a step increase. There's going to be some parameters, and
Yeah.
we can have HR present those to us maybe the end of March or April or something. Yeah. So we need to make sure we do that. And public comment? Yes?
One, I want to thank the commission for getting us to this point. It's been a long ho-ho. HR's done a great job. Thank you so much for what you guys have done. Just things to bring forward so you guys have it on your plate. The last 3 years, you guys were able to pick the medical up for the adjustments. That has been huge, because it's not like we're giving you a 3% bump, but we're taking 2% back from you.
Yeah.
If we're doing the steps increase, it's going to be on anniversary dates. So not everybody's going to get it on October 1st.
Correct.
So if we don't cover the medical, people will go backwards as of January 1st, depending on when they hit their step increase.
Yeah.
So I just want you guys to keep that in fashion. And the last one is also, we have a lot of senior people that are at the top of the grade, Sheriff's Department and on our side. So if you're doing a step increase, there's no step for them. So I just want you to keep that in mind too, that, our senior people, I would say probably about 50 or 60 people in the county are at the top of the.
No, Dorothy had analyzed that.
So it's
much
like
better now.
35. It's a
Yeah,
lot better.
it's not.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna go to that stop, just remember Percy's based off 3% each year. So if you're gonna give the top step area, maybe just the 3%, so they're making what they're supposed to be putting into their Percy.
So
It would have to be, unless we move the matrices, they would have to get it potentially as a bonus.
Yes.
We did it as one-time
Yeah.
bonuses one year.
I just wanted to something to think about while you guys are moving forward.
Right, and so I would more likely consider a one-time bonus for people who are off the matrix or at their last step, because the positions are worth so much money, period. I mean, if you have a secretary here for 30 years, they're not going to be making the same as, an A&P director. So we need to keep that in mind. So trying to offset some of those losses when they're not getting a bump in salary, but they're still, having different things come out. I would look at a one-time retention bonus, actually, saying thank you for being here for 20 years and we want to, keep you there. So just my idea. We can address
Yeah.
that later.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we're also looking at those periodic salary reviews too, so that would come into play as another factor, so, but it's a good point.
Just wanted to bring points up, just to,
Yeah.
something to think about, and the medical has been huge the last few years.
Yeah, and
It's been-
that's always my goal, is to try to cover that if we
Thank you
can.
so much for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, the medical,
Yeah,
so,
that's another issue. So,
it's a different meeting.
yeah. Okay. Any other public comment? Jonathan, anyone online? Is there anyone on the phone who would like to make a public comment? All right, hearing none. I don't even know what time it is. 2:06, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.